Love to hear that. Recording in progress. So you are in for a fantastic afternoon because you're going to get not one, but two presenters who are to lead not one, but two sessions. Virtual Story Techniques for Creative Collaboration, Part 1 and Part 2, with Jean and Mimi and all of their wonderful delightfulness. All of the stories, all of the time. And I am just going to turn it over to them because they've got so much cool stuff to share with us.
Thank you, Beth. Great. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. And as Beth was saying, you are here at Virtual Storytelling, and we're going to talk about techniques for creative collaboration in Part 1. But as was also mentioned, this is a two-parter. So yes, we are extra sipsy for us today. So I'm going to be leading you together with Jean Storlie. My name is Mimi Sherlock, and we're going to lead you through this two-part session. So Jean and I will certainly want to tell you a little bit about ourselves before we get going. So you know kind of where we're coming from and why we're here today and really how we got here. You may have noticed in our names here that we've adopted a fairy tale character that resonates with us. So I have adopted Rapunzel, and Jean has adopted Tinkerbell. And I'd invite you guys to do the same. If you want to rename yourself, you can kind of hover on the top of your screen until you get the three dots. And you can give yourself a name or add on to your name using maybe a favorite fairy tale character or something just to kind of get us in the story mode and in the imagination mode. So certainly feel free to do that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to invite Jean to start by introducing yourself. Jean, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Tinkerbell, I picked Tinkerbell because she can fly. I just have always thought that being able to fly would be really, really cool. And I know she does some kind of nasty things in the story, but I still think it's always was very enchanted with her magicness. So, all right, on a serious note, I want to take you back to CPSI 2013, which was my first ever CPSI. I was coming off a year of severance, having been laid off from General Mills, getting ready to, or just kind of in the process of launching my consulting business, Storlie Telling. And I went to this session by this amazing woman, Mimi Sherlock. And she had this photo deck and was teaching all different kinds of ways to engage participants in imaginative activities and telling stories and icebreakers and all different ways to inspire creative collaboration. So I waited and waited after the end of the session until everyone was done talking to her and introduced myself and learned that we had a bunch of things in common, that we both had backgrounds in the food industry. We both had scientific backgrounds. I'm a registered dietitian. She was a food scientist and sensory scientist. And we both have roots in the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. Now I live in Minnesota. She's from Nebraska. And she went to the University of Minnesota, which is right here in my backyard. So not only did I meet Mimi at this conference, but I made so many other connections, just like this one I felt with Mimi. And although I went to CPSI just to get certification, and I really was just going to do Springboard, I found my tribe, and that kept me coming back over and over again. So I haven't counted up how many CPSIs, but I've been at most of them ever since 2013. What I do now for a living is I design and facilitate processes that help business teams collaborate in innovation. And then I also do a lot of training and coaching, helping professionals become better storytellers and use it as a tool in their toolbox for being more persuasive and building their credibility.
Great. Okay, well, thanks, Jean. That was a nice story. That was fun. I didn't know I was going to be in your story, your introduction story, but that's great. So I'm Mimi Sherlock again. I chose the fairy tale character Rapunzel, and it's really just because I have this really fond memory of this picture book that I had as a child. And my sisters and I would read it. I think we must have read it like every night for several years. And it was just this beautiful picture book, and just loved the story, read it over and over, and just would constantly talk about Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. And we just thought that was really fun. And so it's really just something that gives me fond memories. But now I work in corporate America. I've worked for a company called International Flavors and Fragrances for many years. In the middle of working for them, I went out on my own and had my own company, which was more focused on just innovation. But after a few years of that, returned back to IFF. I couldn't stay away from the organization and being in a larger group and team. And now I'm leading the strategic insights for IFF, which is a lot about trends and also about just understanding people and human behavior and how people are evolving and how things are changing and what the future is all about. I think that this is my 33rd CPSI, I'm gonna say, or 33rd year of CPSI. There were years that I did a couple CPSIs when we had Winterfest. That was a long time ago. So I've been around for quite a while, and I've been teaching there and doing different sessions over the years. And I am based out of New Jersey. So I'm going to kind of take us forward and tell you a little bit about what to expect during our sessions today. As Jean mentioned, we met at CPSI and we spent a few years kind of working together on various things. And then we ultimately co-authored this book, which is called Once Upon an Invitation, or an Innovation, I should say, a business storytelling guidebook for creative problem solving. And this session is really based on a lot of the content that's in the book. And so we're going to go through a variety of ways to use storytelling techniques, for different types of innovation. We can go to the next slide. The book is really based on, and our approach is based on, certainly the Foresight creative problem solving model, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. But the Foresight creative problem solving model is all about creative collaboration and finding common language and common tools and techniques for people and teams to be creative and to tap into different ways to focus on their problem solving, right? And to do that, especially as a team, it helps have a process and a common language. And so part of what we've done in the book is we've looked at how storytelling can be used all along the creative problem solving process. So when I met Jean and we started working together a little bit, Jean had already started thinking about writing this book. And what she found was that there had been a lot of talk of storytelling in business. There had been a lot of books and different experts that have come up that talk about storytelling in business, but there really wasn't anything around how to use storytelling specifically in innovation or specifically in creative problem solving. And so that's what we wanted to focus on. But you might notice that there's kind of two tracks here, right? So we're looking at how storytelling techniques can be used in the creative problem solving process. But we also know that another really important aspect of innovation is getting stakeholders and key people on board with ideas and getting funding and making things happen, right? It's not just about getting a creative team to be creative and to go through the innovation process. It's about getting other people on board to help fund that, to help support that, and to kind of advocate for the innovations that you're doing. So the one track is certainly using story techniques to inspire creative collaboration, but the other one is how you can use stories to help gain the support of stakeholders. And that's kind of the elements on the top of this graphic around strategic framing and advocating and advancing specifically around that with the stakeholders. So that's really how everything is set up. So today we have a two-parter, like we said. So hopefully many of you can stay for both parts. And the first part, we're going to focus a little bit more on, what do we mean by storytelling? What are some of the fundamentals? What are the key elements involved there? That's really important. And then how do we look at storytelling as we start the innovation process, and specific focus on how storytelling is important for visionary leadership. And then of course, getting into the clarifying part of the process. In part two, later this afternoon, we'll dive into the ideation part of creative problem solving and all the different ways to use story techniques there. And then we'll also jump over to strategic framing and pitching, kind of helping to get the stakeholders on board. So hopefully you guys had a chance to look at the documents and the pre-work. You don't really need a lot to participate today. We want you to think about a fairy tale character just to kind of get yourself in the mindset, if you will. And if you have some paper and some markers or something to write with, that would be great as we go into some of the activities. And also, we have found that a lot of times when we're doing some creative exercises, it helps to have a muse. So if you have any sort of an object or an artifact that is kind of a muse for you or that might inspire you, hopefully keep that handy, and we can take advantage of that during the session if it's nearby. I brought my camera, my old Pentax K1000 is my muse. I don't know, it just gets me kind of in the creative mindset and reminds me of how I love to utilize my creativity.
Since I'm a fairy, I brought a fairy wand.
Oh, you brought your wand. Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So just look around your office. Is there anything that inspires you, or wherever you're at, if you're in your bedroom, wherever you are, is there a picture, an object, a knickknack, a gift that someone gave you? And maybe that muse will bring you a story.
The story muse.
The story muse. And it looks like
speaking of story,
has one. Yeah.
Jean.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can kick us off with an example of a story.
Yeah. Okay. Let's jump into storytelling by taking you back to the mid-60s, where my dad, Jack Storlie, had just walked out of a meeting with the University of Wisconsin's Board of Regents. And he was fuming because he had just pitched to them the idea of installing computer systems at University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, where he was a chemistry professor. He had become an evangelist around the future of computers and couldn't believe that they didn't even consider his proposal or listen to his ideas. In fact, one of the regents even scoffed at him and said, "Computers? Aren't those gadgets that physicists down at Madison play around with? What does a jock school like La Crosse need with a computer?" UW-La Crosse had a national reputation as a physical education school, but it was often referred to as sort of a second-class citizen as a jock school. Well, he walked out of the room, contained his anger, and channeled that into returning to campus and advocating for computers. He wandered the halls, knocking on the doors of other faculty members, and inspired them about how computers could accelerate their research agendas. One day, he was ranting in the faculty lounge, complaining about that terrible meeting with the Board of Regents. And one of his colleagues came up and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Jack, I've been reading some stuff about how computers can really transform motion studies on athletes. And I'd really like to do a study on the football team, and maybe we could work together." So the two of them wrote a proposal, submitted it to the National Science Foundation, which they successfully were awarded and started their study. Meanwhile, my dad, kept getting the pull from the faculty members, but also began to push up through the administration and try to help them see how computers could create more operational efficiencies in university functions like grade reports and registration. He brought in colleagues from Burroughs and IBM to demo some of these possibilities. And during some of these meetings, he described how the future work that everyone, staff and faculty, would have access to key data that everyone needed to have through terminals on their desks. One of the faculty members, or one of the administrators, said, "Secretaries? Why would a secretary ever need a computer?" Well, despite that kind of headwinds, he was pushing not just for one computer, but two. He believed that if they got only one, that the administrative needs would be so vast that there would be no bandwidth left for the academic research and the data compilation with that. Well, after years of that pushing and pulling, he had another meeting back in front of the Board of Regents. This time he had backing from the university administration. He had seed money from Burroughs and IBM. And he also had a published paper on the motion study on athletes. He opened his meeting saying, "Last time I was here, you asked me, why does a jock school need a computer?" And he passed around his paper and he said, "Computers can help you win football games." A few years later, the computer science academic program was founded, and as well as the administrative computer department, and my dad left his post as a chemistry professor and led those for a number of years until he retired. In 2018, they celebrated the 50th anniversary of that big milestone. My dad, fortunately, was deceased and not there to attend that historic moment, but he was honored for his visionary leadership in bringing computers to a jock school.
Awesome. Can you imagine having to fight for a computer?
Yeah. Yeah, clearly he could see a world that others couldn't see. And that is really common in visionary leaders. And not only can they see what others can't see, they seem to have a craft for telling stories that help people imagine the future that's different than today's reality. Yeah. So this is why we really believe that stories are a powerful tool in innovation, one of the many reasons. So let's rewind a little bit and go into the fundamentals of storytelling. So you know how Mimi and I define stories and the structure that we use for putting stories together. Being scientists, we really like to see the evidence. And we're quite inspired when we learned that a neuroscientist by the name of Paul Zak had been studying the neuroscience around trust. And in that process, he discovered that the brain chemistry changed in response to a good narrative. Okay? And specifically, the brain releases a hormone called oxytocin. Anyone who's been involved in childbirth knows that a woman's body is flooded with oxytocin after childbirth. It's often called the love hormone. It's associated with empathy, compassion, and trust. But Zak learned that you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to tell a story," and start stringing together a set of facts. That there have to be three key elements for it to produce for the brain to release the oxytocin. It needs to have a character who is struggling against an obstacle. He or she may not overcome that obstacle, but in the struggle, they experience an emotional transformation. Something clicks and aha, now I'm no longer struggling. I see something more clearly and now I have a change. If that story is told well, the audience travels along with that character and feels the same emotions that the character feels, and thus we have the empathy. So for the purposes of this session, we like to define a story as a character who struggles against an obstacle and experiences an emotional transformation that leads to a new understanding or truth. Okay. Do take some notes. This is kind of a helpful thing to jot down or at least imprint in your mind. A struggle, an emotion, or a character, a struggle, and change. I like to think sometimes that was then, this is now, and something happened in between. And that something that happened in between is the story. Okay, so you need to see those three elements: the character who's struggling at some sort of a turning point where clarity comes into focus, and there's resolution, and then there's change. They see the world differently after that. Okay.
So Jean, those elements are important. I mean, you don't get the oxytocin, right? Unless you actually go through that, right? I mean, it can't just be any old story. It really has to have those elements, right?
Yep. That's what Zach's research shows.
Yeah.
And I tend to find that, in my work in storytelling, when I bring those elements to it, that's when I'm getting the results of persuasion and people having the empathy and people being really moved. And I think I feel that myself when I watch a show or read a book, that if those elements are there, I definitely feel a lot of empathy for the characters.
Yeah.
Javier, I think you're putting the handouts in the chats. If you want to put these two handouts up, these would be very handy for you to have. The 1, 2, 3 steps is just a 1-page worksheet that outlines the method that I'm going to show you that we use. And then there's also an 8-page booklet. We aren't going to go through all the content in the booklet, but since we're going to kind of hit the highlights on the storytelling fundamentals, that might be a resource for you to delve further after the session. So the method that we introduce in the book is that, first of all, you need to find story gems. And story gems are raw story ideas. They may or may not fully turn into the story. Maybe it has 2 of the elements, but maybe it's lacking that emotional transformation. Maybe there's a struggle, but there isn't a resolution. But go ahead and capture all the possible story gems. And we'll be doing a number of different tools through part 1 and part 2 that you will have to find some story gems. And then number 2 is to develop the plot and the meaning. This is probably the hardest part, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining that step in the process so that you begin to get a framework in mind that will be helpful to you. And then the third step is to polish with salient details. And by salient details, I mean sensory descriptors that go beyond what you see. As humans, we tend to default to describe what's going around us through sight. But if we can bring in what something smells like, or tastes, or touches, or sounds that go with that experience, we can bring a character and setting to life. So just as a quick example, let's say that the slap of the wind as I walked out the door on Michigan Street in Chicago on a November day. Okay, that's signaling that it's a cold, kind of raw, biting day. On the other hand, if I felt this gentle breeze tickle my skin as I rocked in a hammock on a sunny July day, now you're in a very different setting. So see how that sensory detail can bring you into the scene of the story.
Hey, Jean, someone had a question here about that term gem. Like when you say find story gems, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
We just coined that phrase because we ultimately want you all to build a story treasure chest. Put all your little gems in that story treasure chest and keep building your chest as life goes on. And you will have plenty of stories to draw on when you're in a moment that you need to have the story.
So really just some a handful of stories that really tend to work well and resonate with people and move people, and those would be stories that you'd count kind of as your gems.
Right.
Okay.
And we often use the phrase mining for story gems. So you're kind of mining your life for these gems. And so it's just a metaphor to think about how you're finding these precious little story ideas. And they are precious. So they're gems. Okay, so let's go a little bit more into that second step of developing the plot and meaning. We like to just go back to the narrative arc, which we all learned in our high school and college English classes, where there's the set the stage, and then the rising tension, a climax, sometimes called turning point, and then there's the resolution of that tension and the meaning or the lesson that comes away. And then notice that I have that moving arrow that goes across the bottom, emotional transformation. Coming back to what I said before, that was then, this is now. What happened in between is the story. To help solidify this for you a little bit, we're going to just go through the story I just told, but instead do it with, Mimi's going to actually retell the story with just using the plot points. And on why does a jock school need a computer? We start
with the regents who just didn't, kind of set the stage in terms of the resistance that the regents had to this idea, right? And then kind of making a point of being able to utilize this with a colleague and do some experiments and do the kinesiology studies, and I can't say that word very well.
On football players too.
On football players. So that was something that people could relate to, because this was a big football school, right? It was all about football. So if you can relate something back to football, you got people's attention.
Yeah.
And then not only one computer, but two computers, right? Kind of building this tension of, what? Are you kidding? We need more. Why would anyone else, need these? Why would secretaries need this computer? Kind of building tension that was happening here with the resistance and people not understanding how this could make an impact. And then finally, the turning point, right, of being able to show how you can relate this back to something that everyone was supportive of, and utilize it, using something familiar, like with the football program. And then getting the second computer in the system, and the computer science department then being built as a result of all this, and you can kind of see how things are transforming. And then at the end of the day, kind of the reflection of looking back and realizing how important this turning point was, and the vision that was there to kind of persevere and to make this happen.
And then the last thing that I like to do with this plotting tool is to, underneath the arc, put the deeper meaning. Because once you've got your story gem, you need to step back and distill down what is that story about? And this story is about visionary leadership, and that they need to be bold and a little crazy. And because they're crazy and a little too bold for everyone else, they're often a bit lonely. And then there's the lesson that you can take away from this on top-down influence and bottom-up. He brought in industry collaborators. And then also sometimes the lonely journey of a visionary leader is they have to let go of the past in order to allow the future. So my dad had to let go of his teaching career, which he loved teaching. My mom always tells me that was a really hard decision for him, because he absolutely loved being in the classroom. And also all the chemistry research that he was deep into as well.
So Jean, the deeper meaning, would that equate kind of with the moral of the story?
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're going to tease out the moral and the
Mhm.
meaning and the lesson. And not every story has a moral lesson, you know, like those are really heavy words, but just something that leaves you thinking differently.
Mhm. Kind of
Yeah,
what the transformation was all about.
yep, yep. And the other piece of this is that if you can ladder up your story into an archetype, which is another word for a universal plot, you know you've landed on something pretty deep. So one book that Mimi and I just love, The Circle of the Nine Muses, has a chapter with 14 archetypes in it. And one of the archetypes in The Circle of the Nine Muses is the lonely path of the visionary. And if we just put my dad's story side by side with this one, you see the visionary was driven by a vision to do something new, encountered critics, people who couldn't see what I saw and faced barriers. I made sacrifices alone for the things I believe in. I unveiled my brilliant creation to acclaim or derision. And today, our world is improved because of the visionary who is fulfilled and recognized. So you can see that there's a straight parallel along that plot with my dad's story. The regent shot him down. The administrators shot him down. They thought his ideas were crazy. He put his reputation at risk. But eventually he succeeded, and eventually he was recognized for all that hard work he did. Mimi,
Yeah.
what else do you like about archetypes?
Well, specifically this book, everyone, like Jean, I highly recommend it. It's by David Hutchins. And, you know, I think what I've found, and this has been fairly recent, I think I've known this for a while, but I haven't really figured out how to act on it until more recently. But really just being aware of some of these story frameworks or some of these universal plots that, you know, theorists, I guess, have been talking about for a while. Being aware of them has really helped me to do a lot of the work that I do, especially with consumers and consumer understanding. And I'll hear different consumer stories that certainly don't follow specifically every element of these universal plots that David Hutchins has brought to life in this book. But when I look at them, I can kind of connect them and I can find deeper meaning in them. And I guess what it's all about is that, right, people have been telling and living kind of the same stories over and over. And I think when you recognize that these same stories are all around us and you can connect to those, you can take some of your own stories that you hear or that you have in your own world and kind of take them to the next level using those frameworks, using those universal plots and those frameworks, because that structure that's incorporated into those is kind of magical. And it's a structure that most people resonate with and that really makes the stories even easier to connect with. And so when you can use those or connect to those universal plots, you can elevate your story and make it, you know, even more kind of more polished, I guess, if we're talking about those as story gems.
You know, I also use David Hutchins' archetypes to look for stories. I use it as a way to come up with story gems by skimming through those. Often I'll be like, oh, that reminds me of when such and such happened to me. So, okay. So our next section here is visionary leadership. And
yeah, I can talk about this model.
Things are bouncing around on me here. I was trying to get away to look at the chat, so I'm messing up here on my. But you go ahead.
Yeah, we can see it. It looks okay. Yeah, so this is a model that Jean and I like a lot, and in the book, you know, certainly we're looking at how you can use story techniques for the entire creative problem solving process, but we do emphasize quite a bit how important and how useful they are in visionary leadership. And this is a model that I think is why, right? It kind of explains the why. And it just talks about the 3 H's, right? The head, the heart, and the hands. And the whole idea that, you know, to be a visionary leader and to create a vision, you know, your vision has to be grounded in the head, right? It has to be grounded in logic and knowledge and reality, and you have to have a rationale for a vision. And that's super important. But just as important is that vision has to be inspiring, right? Otherwise, no one's going to follow it. No one's going to take that lead. And the heart is really the whole idea that, you know, it takes passion, right? The emotional commitment to change. If you're talking about a vision, you're talking about a change, and to bring people along and change, you know, people have to emotionally commit to that change. And then the hands is just all about the idea that it's great to have a vision, but you know, we have to be able to take action against it, right? We have to actually be able to make that change happen. We have to make it actionable. And what stories do is that stories incorporate all 3 of those things, right? I mean, stories certainly bridge the logic. You know, they bridge it to the passion. They help translate a vision into action. You can use a lot of stories to do all those things. And so, you know, stories are a great tool as a visionary leader. And as Jean mentioned before, a lot of times, and I think some people in the chat said, great visionaries tend to be great storytellers. They can really paint that vision really, really well. Right. So there's lots of techniques for using storytelling and visioning, and I think we've outlined probably 10 or 12 of them throughout the book. But today we thought we could just go over a couple techniques. Guided imagery. We're going to talk about using kind of a best story technique, and snowball, pair, and share. So we're going to give you a chance to go through these. And I guess we'll start with some guided imagery. So Jean is going to take us through a guided imagery exercise at this point.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is set papers aside, pencils aside, and take a great big deep breath. Lift your shoulders up, and we're all going to breathe it out together. Let's do another one of those. In and out. On your next in breath, just tip your head to the side and in, and then out. Roll your head to the other side. Take a deep breath in and out. All the way around. And then a shoulder roll on the next in and out. All right, now sit yourself in a neutral position in your chair. Uncross your legs. Scooch your rear all the way to the back so that your low back is supported. Take another deep breath in and lift your hands. And when you breathe out, let your hands just fall with your palms up in a neutral position on your lap. Now just keep following your breath, kind of a in, 2, 3, and out, 2, 3. And just let your eyes flicker shut. And I want you to conjure, as you follow your breath, into a career best experience. A memory that you have about a time when you drove to work and you just couldn't wait to get there because everything you were going to do that day was so exciting and energizing. People you were going to do it with were super great colleagues. And when you left work at the end of that day, you had goosebumps thinking about all the awesome accomplishments you'd done. So again, following your breath, in, 2, 3, and out, 2, 3. What year was this when you had this awesome experience? Where were you working? What was that work that you were doing? Follow that nice breath in, 2, 3, and out, 2, 3. Thinking about that work, the excitement. What was the physical work environment like? What were the sounds? Smells? What did it look like? Who were the people that you worked with? What were their names? How old were you at the time? What was going on in the world? Who was president? You have kids. How old were your kids? Just let yourself go back in that time capsule. And while you're there, think about all the details that made that work so amazing. Take a couple more deep breaths. Let yourself relive that wonderful experience. And on your next breath, I want you to take one great big deep breath. Take your thumb, rub it across your fingertips, wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. On the next deep breath, lift your shoulders and blink your eyes open and just sigh it out. Before breaking this mood, pick up a blank sheet of paper or a journal, whatever you have handy to write with, and either write or draw what you experienced when you conjured that memory of your career best experience. We're going to give you a few minutes to just write out your story. Let your creativity flow, suspend judgment, suspend structure, and just go with your energy. Maybe your muse will help you. Okay. Take about 15 more seconds and close out your thoughts. right. All right, let's bring our attention back together. What we're going to do next is introduce a technique that we call snowball pair and share. I'm going to explain kind of the whole process, and then you're going to experience a snippet of it because we don't have time to do the full technique. The first step would be to partner up with one person, and you each share your career best stories. And you find your common themes. And then two people join with the pairs join with another pair, and they become a quad and repeat the same process. And then quads merge and become a group of 8, and they repeat the same process. And then you keep doing this until eventually you have the whole room together. The first time I ever experienced this, I was a participant. I was working at General Mills at the time. It was 2010, and we were working on a 10-year vision for the women's leadership program. And there were 30 women in a conference room. And it was like magic happened in the room that day. And everyone who I talked to who was with me that day feels the same thing happened. That we wrote this vision, identified 4 strategic pillars, and never have I experienced a vision that has lasted through round after round after round of stakeholder input after what a group has created in a work session. It was like poetry had happened. Everyone in that room was so excited about moving forward and making that vision happen. And we got so many other people who wanted to join the cause, and senior leadership in the company thought it was absolutely amazing. I've used this technique then now as a consultant over and over and get very similar results. So what we're going to do is skip the pair and share and go straight to the quad share and have you experience what it's like to do this exercise of sharing your career best and finding common themes amongst your stories. So Beth, you can send them out into their Zoom rooms. You don't need to actually take any slides from the chat box. Just put the videos, put your video in gallery mode so you can all talk, share your stories. Try to take about 2 minutes per person. If someone wants to be mindful of the time, that could be helpful, because sometimes people start telling stories and they don't realize that they've talked for maybe 5 minutes. And then make sure you save a little bit of time to find some similarities in your stories. And you're going to be out there for 10 minutes.
Hey, Jean.
Yeah.
Some people were saying that they were having a hard time hearing you. I'm wondering if, I don't know if your microphone is low or if you're not close enough to the computer when you talk, or if you could talk a little louder.
Okay, I can talk louder. Can you hear me? Or
I can, but it is a little soft.
okay. Okay. Should I stop share so you can send them out?
I sent them out.
Oh, okay.
They'll get a notification they have to accept.
Okay.
Suzanne Michelle Janella, are you going to be going into a breakout room?
No, I was not going to.
Okay,
I'm sort of listening as I do something else.
no problem.
Thank you.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm enjoying the listening and the learning.
No problem.
So I am on the highest volume I can on my output. Was it when I was doing the guided imagery that I got soft? Because I was sort of doing that theatrically.
Yeah, it might be when you step back from your computer a little bit,
Okay.
because now I can hear you much better. Now that you're a little bit, I think you're a little closer.
Okay.
I don't know, Beth, did you have the same thing or no?
Yeah, I saw that. I do think it's a distance thing.
Okay.
Daniela,
Wonder if I use
she might be away from her desk.
She put in the chat. She actually is in the chat right now.
Oh, she's in another meeting. Okay, no problem.
So is this
Sorry to
better?
follow. Yeah, and that's, you're not alone.
Is
There are
this
a number
better?
of people. Try it again.
Is this better? Can you hear me?
It's better when you're closer, when you stand closer to the computer.
Okay, because I was trying to go through my AirPods instead. That doesn't help.
No,
Oh,
No,
maybe it did.
It doesn't help.
I don't hear a difference.
Okay, you don't hear a difference?
Yeah, I don't hear an improvement when you walk away.
Okay, all right.
All right. There is 7.5 minutes.
Someone said they still don't get what a story gem is. Is it an idea or a story? Do you think we need to revisit that?
Maybe
Story-
reinforce it
An
that it's a
idea.
story,
Yeah, it's
a
got
story that you find that you can use over
Right.
and over. And
the idea for a story. Yeah. Okay. I will just make I'll just send a note.
when they go on the whiteboard, do they just do it by reactions? There used to be annotate,
Well, they use annotate.
but where's annotate?
You go up.
Nobody's
to the
sharing
top.
screen, so it's not there right now.
Oh, okay.
When Jean shares screen at the top, it'll have view options, and you can click on that, and then annotate will come up.
So everyone can do that from there.
Yeah.
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 Sorry, I don't use Zoom all the time. I'm always on Teams, so I get confused between where everything is on every system.
My best friend uses WebEx, but he runs the IT for a community college, so they're licensed for like 30,000 people, and I'm like, yeah, WebEx is nice,
Yeah.
but boku bucks.
Yeah.
I will admit, this past year, I've been frustrated with different conferences that have decided to go fancy. And it's added so many layers of confusion that I think is just, like, I am very tech savvy, I believe. And if I am struggling with it, then you have got to know, especially if it's education world, because then you're going to have a number of people who remember the 60s and they're going to struggle. So, Jean, you'll have to re-drop that in chat when they come back.
Oh, okay.
Because right now, only this group can see that.
Okay.
So Beth, just because
All right.
video doesn't mean I can't hear you. And as one who remembers.
All right, you're right. Because there are, like, and then I see people like who are, like, my husband just turned 40. And I'm like, dude, I'm Gen X, so I was early Oregon Trail. I'm like, you have never lived in a world that they haven't had computers in your school. You should be much more tech savvy than I am.
I'm having a hard time setting up, and this doesn't normally happen in Zoom, where I can't see the chat. I can't see the chat, the people, and the screen
You
all at one time.
you've got to go full screen. Like, are you currently full screen on your
Yeah.
computer? And then it'll have the chat on the side and everything else.
It doesn't have them all. They're floating panels.
Do you have the menu? You might have to click more and pull it up.
Yeah. Yeah. The more says show subtitle, view full screen subtitles. You know, it doesn't have the full screen thing that's normally there. This is the first time I've ever had that in Zoom. I do Zoom all the time. Anyway, all right, I can just deal with them in floating boxes, but.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left. I will send this out. Wow. I am continually amazed at how time works because
In what way?
it's 2 o'clock.
How fast it goes, you mean?
Yeah, we started the session 5 minutes ago.
I know.
And it's
an
2
hour.
o'clock. Yeah.
Sometimes that's good.
Okay, so Mimi, we do have to pick up our pace. We are running behind. Maybe we should not do the getting the volunteers in discussion and just have people put their stuff in comments for this. What do you think?
It does work well. And people have been like,
Easy to chat.
share your learnings in chat. It's nice for people who save chat too.
Have it all documented.
Yeah. Getting behind. You haven't been reminding me.
Make sure you drink some water. Stay
What are you
hydrated.
behind, Beth?
Drinking water.
Oh,
Water is very important. Hydration is
I'm
very
like, how do you
important.
know if we're behind?
I'm
I guess
behind
you
in my
know everything. You're behind on your water.
I'm behind in my water.
Look at you. Good for you. All that
Yeah.
water.
I'm at 11 a.m.
I think I've been drinking that much coffee today. I got to switch.
All right. They will be back momentarily.
Okay.
I started seeing a nutritionist because the pound-demic hit me hard.
I haven't heard that. That is great.
So we have no more breakout rooms for session 1.
Nope.
Right.
Okay, so Mimi, I took out the thing about the panel and we'll just have them put their comments in chat and debrief on this slide.
Okay.
I hid the other 2 slides just so we can move a little faster and get into clarify.
All right, 5, 4, 3.
Get one back. Okay. Do you want me to go, Jane,
Yeah.
or you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay. So welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a chance to find some common themes and share those in this what we call the snowball pair and share. So what we want to do is just do a quick debrief of these activities, right? Thinking about the three, is that right, Jean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What commonalities they had, what did they find some magic in their shared experience?
Yeah, so we're going to do that through the chat, you guys, if you're comfortable to do that. If you could just share, what was your experience like kind of sharing stories? Were you able to find some commonalities? Any ahas? What was that experience like? How did the tools work? What helped you? Any comments you have about using some of these tools? Did it help you to kind of start with the guided imagery? Was that something that you found really helpful to kind of get into the story? How did you find the pair and share?
I guess the other question I'd ask, did anyone find that, what did it feel like that someone else maybe had a similar experience? Like their career best experience might have been really different, but that there was some similarities. Okay, what I'm hearing in the comments, everyone's stories seem to have an aha breakthrough moments and have taken us to where we are today. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when you start with a topic and you ask people to talk about their best experience, right? All those experiences are going to be very different, but typically you find a lot of commonalities of what are the things that make these experiences so successful. And I don't know, I've used this technique quite a bit with people to kind of come up with this common vision using kind of these good experiences or best type story experiences. And I've used it for a variety of occasions. And I don't know, I always fall back on this one. It always works for me. So I hope you had kind of a similar experience, albeit a quick experience with this set of tools.
A couple of things people are saying, taking risks was a commonality. Jump in and be yourself was another commonality. Lots of people are thanking the people in their team for sharing their stories. Someone said everyone's stories seem to have aha breakthrough moments and have taken us to where we are today.
Yeah, so you can see how you can use these techniques to get everyone kind of on the same page and agree on a portion or elements of a vision. And I think, as someone mentioned in the chat, the other added benefit of sharing stories is that team building aspect that always happens when you have people share stories. The other day, I used this technique with a small leadership team that I'm a part of, and we had just gotten together as a new merger in a company. And, on top of kind of finding some commonalities in an exercise we were doing, in that case, to kind of find our why for the group, people were really excited about just being able to connect on a different level, even though the story sharing was literally like 2 minutes a person. So this can work, and it can work in pretty short amounts of time, pretty successfully.
That's great. Yeah, I love this technique. I use it. So it's a go-to method for me in visioning. Okay, so let's just have one final interactive input on visioning. Could you use the annotate function to do that? You hover around the top of your screen and you'll see 3 dots with a more, or no, actually, that's not where you have to go. You'll hover and then you'll see annotate. Click on that annotate and then the stamp, and then grab any kind of symbol you want, and then just put some stamps on which of these 3 techniques you might see yourself using. That's great. Thank you. We love it. And one more thing I can say about the best story experience, or that comes out of methodology called appreciative inquiry. And Kim McKiernan did a session about appreciative inquiry. I know she did. I attended hers last year, and she did it again this year. And she does a lot more with it. But this is kind of one piece. It's in the the dream and discover stage of appreciative inquiry. And I think it really lends itself, because of the use of story, to helping people start on a positive. Because if it's something that you love, you know, and maybe it's not your career best, maybe it's your best ever customer service, or, you know, best meal you ever had, best vacation you ever took. It's got the positivity of it unleashes a lot of positive emotions. And then people just love sharing those experiences that they feel really good about. Okay, I think that we are ready to go on to our next section here. But thank you very much. It looks like people would potentially all three of these
People like
techniques.
to use the annotate tool.
Yeah. And then Beth or one of the wings, if you wouldn't mind erasing that for me, that'd be great. And go to the next slide. Clarify. We're going to start clarify with another story. Again, rewind back in time to the early 80s. I was in graduate school where I was the nutrition coordinator for an adult fitness cardiac rehab program, and I ran a lot of weight management classes. I had a patient named Pat who was the perfect client. She came regularly, she came early, she did all the homework, she kept her exercise logs and her food eating records just meticulously. And through the course of the 3-month program, she had lost about 15 pounds. She had lost quite a bit of body fat. She was walking 5 miles a day. And I was just so thrilled one day when Pat called me about 3 months after she graduated from the program and said, "Jean, hi, can I talk to you?" And I was just so happy to follow up and hear how she was doing. And she goes, "I really need to talk to you. I have a problem." And I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell me what your problem is." And she said, "This morning, I stuck my leg out of bed and I saw a skinny leg." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's great. It means you're really getting in shape." And she said, No, you don't understand. And then I went down to the kitchen and I reached up to the cupboard and I saw a skinny arm. And I'm like, okay, you know, I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing why this is a problem. Like, isn't this really, you know, what you've been working on? And she goes, "No, you don't understand. I'm starting to feel like I can actually be thin. And what am I going to do? If I go to a party, maybe people will want to talk to me. I've always just been Jim's wife. Maybe I need to go to school. Maybe I need to get a job. I'm not really sure that I know, you know, how to behave now that this is real for me." At that point, I knew I was in way over my head. You know, I'm 23 years old. I felt like I was, you know, knew everything about not only nutrition, but exercise. And I could put it all together, but I realized that my facts and knowledge about health science were not going to help people change their lives unless I really understood their stories. I know, Mimi, you love this story. Tell me what it is that resonates.
Well, it just gets me every time when you tell this story. I've heard it quite a few times now, but it just gets me because, right, I mean, it's just kind of the unexpected that happens, and just you really get to feel like that she's truly in a panic, and that there's really important things happening here, you know, emotionally, that go well beyond, you know, any fact or anything else. And I think, you know, it does lead to the point, right? That's what stories do. They very quickly get you to the emotion and the context and the kind of the deeper meaning there.
Right. Yeah. My takeaway on this one is that sometimes success can be as defeating as failure. And in Pat's case, it was. She really wasn't ready emotionally to live in this thinner body that she had learned was in reach for her. And she ended up I ran into her on campus a couple years later, and she had divorced Jim. She had was taking classes. She was struggling to find time to exercise. She'd regained all the weight she lost, but she did hug me and say that she'd never felt better, like physically, and hoped at some point when her life would have a little more stability, she'd come back and apply the lessons that she learned. I really don't know what happened longer term on that, but Pat moved me in really deep way. And from that point forward, I realized as a nutrition counselor, health educator, I needed to pay more attention to people's stories and get underneath the surface of what's going on in their life. And I think that this is the same thing we need to do as innovators, is understand our users and our consumers in deeper ways. So we share this story as an intro to clarify, because we could go through all kinds of trend data about people being overweight and descriptive terms like people feel depressed and they experience failure, and those words wouldn't mean as much, but when you see them in the context of Pat's story, the data means so much more. You know, the data answers the what, and the stories answer the so what.
Mhm.
So we like to use stories in combination with data. We aren't saying that you don't need the rigor around technical data if you're building a technical product, or market research data to understand your consumer, and the business analytics to understand all of the metrics of what the business needs to perform. But when you add stories along with all of that data that teams need to immerse in when they're clarifying a problem and beginning to lead innovation.
Yeah, I think this story does provide the empathy building, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's so important. And, Gina and I have had so many discussions about this combination of data and narrative, and what that balance is like. And we put together this pretty simple continuum, because there's a lot of different ways. When we clarify, we think a lot about the facts and dumping information. And we have evolved, I think, especially in the world of design thinking, to be more human-centered, to have the empathy. But in this little graphic here, we just kind of articulate going from the very left-hand side of just, having a lot of data, right? And that could be a lot of different types of data. But when you take that to the next level of kind of a consumer profile and add some more demographics or psychographics, you certainly start to have more insight about a person or about a situation. When you create a persona and kind of represent this data through a real person or through a representative subject, it does help to humanize it a little bit more, adding more context, adding more meaning. And I guess ultimately what we've found is that the more you can get to and find opportunities to really use that full narrative, that full story structure as much as possible, where a character's developed and you understand the conflict and the struggle and then the transformation on the other side, it's a real opportunity, and it can be extremely powerful. So we try to incorporate that more and more, into the clarify step of creative problem solving.
And when you think about it, data dehumanizes people and stories humanize them. And that's why Mimi and I just love to bring the user stories into the clarifying process. So let's give you an example to help you see, to illustrate why we love this continuum so much. Let's take this consumer profile and insights. So we sort of blended the two left-hand sides of the continuum together. We're trying to learn and understand boomers. This is actually some data that's a little bit old. It's about maybe 8 years old, but boomers at that point in time were 61 to 70. Obviously they're older now. Younger boomers are 53 to 60. And they're often seen as sort of one cohort, but actually they are living different lifestyle situations. Older boomers may work or may be in a second career. The younger boomers are likely to still be working, maybe still have kids at home that they're supporting. All are starting to see some signs of aging. Both may be caring for ailing parents or have seen them pass. We know from trend data that their top health concerns are weight, energy, mobility, digestive health, heart health. But we also know from immersing through ethnography work that they bring an optimism and defiance to the aging process, just as they brought defiance and optimism to the social revolution in the 60s. They don't want to age the way their parents aged. They want to defy the traditional views and still be healthy, vital, be seen as youthful, fashionable, on trend, and more importantly, to be active. I think they starting to realize that there is no fountain of youth. And despite this desire to be invincible, they are experiencing some of the effects of aging. So as you look at that profile, what key insights did you glean? If you want to just put a few thoughts in the chat. And then do you see any elements of story in that data? You see any tensions in there? Any characteristics of this person, this this population group?
Gina, can you put the profile back up?
Sure. Yeah, people are experiencing some of these. All right. So then what I want to do is take you to the next level and give you a consumer persona. So I'm Gloria, a 61-year-old lawyer, wife, and mother of 3 grown children. I believe in living an active lifestyle and eating healthy so I can fight the effects of aging. I want to run around and play with my grandchildren rather than sit in a chair and watch them. So that would be an example of how you're taking that data, you're putting a face, you're putting a name, and you're adding some personality characteristics and some attitudinal psychographic data, but it's put into the context of the person. Okay, now I want to take it one step further. And Mimi, will you read the Gloria more about?
Sure. I'm Gloria, a 61-year-old lawyer, wife, and mother of 3 grown children. When I was 28, my dad died from a sudden heart attack. Sensitive and charming, he was always there for me. 25 years later, I still miss him. It was traumatic to lose him at such a young age, but his passing made me realize the hazards of unhealthy habits. He smoked heavily and was overweight and sedentary. Because of this experience, living healthy has been a core value for me and my family. We eat well and we stay active. 10 years ago, I was shocked to learn that I have fibromyalgia, which causes low-level chronic pain and debilitating flare-ups. Shortly after that, my husband was diagnosed with hypertension. It pulled me back to those dark days after my dad died. But we doubled down on our commitment to health. Neither of us want to end up in a nursing home on 20 medications, and we discovered new ways to live healthy. We practice yoga and eat more fresh local foods. We took a cooking class and found a fun new hobby that has brought more joy to our food preparations. Despite all our efforts to live healthy and stay off meds, we still experience signs of aging, like needing reading glasses. We have sleep disturbances and joint stiffness.
Okay. So again, chat your thoughts about this. Does the narrative reflect the data? Second, does the narrative does the narrative presentation of the data affect how you empathize with the consumer? And then lastly, how might you use stories to explore consumer and user insights? Any chats? Losing people? Story brings the data to life. Okay, great. That's what we were hoping to hear. Absolutely helps me empathize more. Her struggles come to life.
Adds a lot of additional qualitative information adds the health background that allows us to understand why they're interested in living healthy. So it gives us the why, the background.
Right. And how they're not wanting to be a victim. Okay.
Makes it more memorable. I think that's a good, great
So
point
if
as
you
well.
please annotate and just stamp on the model which you like better. And there's probably, you know, a yes and in there, but we'd love to hear how you're resonating with the model. And any final thoughts you have about how the model makes you think differently about consumer data. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. All right, we're going to do one more real quick little exercise. And Mimi and I are going to read this story together. And have.
Yeah, we're going to read the story, then we're going to talk about it real quick.
Yep. Okay.
You want to do the first portion and then we'll go iterate a little bit?
First, yep.
Okay.
A woman was waiting in an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop.
She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man sitting beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene.
So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as the gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye.
With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half.
He offered her half. As he ate the other, she snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude.
She had never known when she had been so galled and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at that thieving ingrate.
She boarded the plane and sank into her seat, then sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes.
If mine are here, she moaned in despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief.
Okay, so give us some chats. What was going on inside your head as you listened to this story unfold?
Great story. I know some of you have probably heard that before. It's made the rounds, but it's such a great example. Great story.
Yeah. It's in the Chicken Soup for the Soul by Valerie Cox. Great book, loaded with stories. Okay. Who wanted some cookies too? Yeah, we all
Time
do.
for cookies.
Yeah. And so what made this a good story? Whoops, I went too far. What do you see the moral of it as? The twist at the end. Yeah, that surprising ending.
Yeah, it's a fun story, and it's kind of fun to have people read and to read aloud. Go
ahead.
No, I just, when you think about at the end of it, people tend to be able to resonate with it as some of the big lessons around perspective, I think, right?
Yep. I like to use it as an energizer. If I time it into a workshop at about that 2 p.m. slump, and if I'm doing it in person, I have everyone stand up and I walk into the audience and we all read it together out loud. And that can be really fun because people feel like they're a little more in the story, and they definitely are energized and the blood is flowing. So that's another tool to use it. But yes, I come back to your point about perspective. And that's, to me, what is so awesome about this is that you have your blinders on. You form a judgment early on, and then you go forward, and all the data and all the inputs that are coming in keep getting processed from that one flawed assumption. And that's why Mimi and I like to use this story in the context of clarifying the problem to solve, because until you really do understand the problem from a full range of perspectives, kaleidoscope of perspectives, each one reveals a slightly different pattern on the same story. So interviewing stakeholders, members of the creative team, key leaders in the company or the organization, competitors, partners, consumers and users. And through all of those different groups, you're going to start to see that problem in a more clear way.
Yeah, so certainly don't stop at one story, right? When you're collecting stories and clarify, really important to get the perspective of a lot of different people.
And also to structure your engagement activities and your research tools so that you're eliciting stories and teasing out not only the struggle, but then what was the plot and any of those other elements of a story structure. Okay, well, we are winding down in our time together here. We wanted to just have you do the annotate tool again. And of the 3 tools that we introduced, are there any of them that you see yourself using?
Again, I think these are pretty simple techniques, right? They're simple, and hopefully you can see how you can utilize these in a variety of settings. But it's great just to kind of have the chance to take you through a few of these simple and powerful techniques.
Oops, something happened here. My slides are jumping.
They're jumpy.
All right, so let's bring her home here. Can we raffle off a book, Beth?
I haven't heard no, so I'm going to go with yes.
Okay, so you want to randomly draw the name of someone who sends their email, and I will send them a link to the book. We're going to give away 1 free book for this one, for part 1, and 1 for part 2.
This will be an ebook, right, Jean?
Yep, ebook.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't win the book, we do have a special exclusive CPSI discount that
Just
will
for you,
be
pretty
going
people.
on all summer, and you can get 21% off the retail price if you order it from Itasca Books. It's also available on Amazon, but we can't discount on Amazon. But you can take advantage of the CPSI discount. Do we have a winner?
We do. It's Elizabeth Deemler? Elizabeth Demeter? Whatever. That's her story name.
Elizabeth, you wanna?
Hi, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful. That's gonna be fun. Thanks.
Great, you guys. It was so much fun. I hope you all come back for the second part.
Yep. And we'll leave our closing quote. Take it, Mimi.
Yes, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. One of our favorite quotes.
Come back for part 2. We'll see you soon.